Secretary Collins, the president's budget calls for a nearly $5 billion increase for the VA, primarily for medical care and for homelessness. You have been accused of cutting care and benefits. We've heard a great deal of that today, which is obviously a scare tactic. How do you plan to target the new funding that you are requesting?
Exactly what you just said there, and that is to our healthcare side. I mean, community care side. Community care is growing, but it's actually been under budgeted in the last few years by the previous administration. So we've got to actually make sure that the proper monies are being put into community care. Also looking at how we actually need to improve our direct care services. We've got a lot of issues out there that range from not only recruitment and retention of employees, but also our facilities, the things that we have. Our average age of facility is well over 60 years old. These are the kind of things that we're working right now that, again, along with a reshaping of the force that we're looking at right now, looking at our contracts to make sure that some of the folks sitting behind me actually get the care that they have deserved and earned. It's interesting to me, though, again, when we talk about here in the last little bit I've had in some of the conversation today is where people have called offices and said they've had, appointments that are delayed or they can't get it. I just simply, and in all fairness, I just have to ask, that was the same thing happening in December. That was the same thing happening in November last year. There's the only difference right now is I'm sitting here saying we are looking and going through a comprehensive approach on how to size the force at the VA and spend the money that you and the House appropriate to us. That's the only difference. People have had to, and again, I could stand veteran after veteran after veteran standing here saying, I couldn't get in to see my appointment. I couldn't get in. The problem is, when was that? We're still working on that because we have issues in our system. Then the bureaucracy is not good. And we had hospitals and VAs who are not sending people to community care.
Cutting bureaucracy means better service for our veterans.
Yes.
And that's what you're doing. How are you planning to reinvest any savings from headcount reduction to improve services for our veterans?
That'll go back into our different services. And I think that's what we've already shown and had to sign off on, taking it back into community care, back into improving our IT systems, back into improving our prosthetics, back into improving our situations when our mental health counselors and others that we can actually show real results in. One of the things that's amazing enough that's not been talked about here today, and I think it's, for me, has been the top line that I've talked about all along, except in a way that frankly was not truthful in the sense of what we're doing, is suicide has not been discussed here today. And the issue that we still have since 2008 have not seen a significant decrease in our veteran suicide rate since 2008, although we have spent literally billions of dollars on that. So when we talked about earlier, we talked about other kinds of care. We've talked about, how can we do tap into research into maybe psychedelics or other things that help. Getting in more with our VSOs and our nonprofits to actually make a difference here. I think this is something we've got to have. We sometimes get caught up in the overall scheme of the VA, believing that the VA, unfortunately being on the Hill, is something that is manipulated or brought back into a certain way that is special. We're special in the sense that we get to treat the veteran of the United States. It is the most precious gift that we have. But we're not unique in healthcare. We experience the same issues that all of healthcare that we got to speak about earlier. And we're going to make sure, just as every other healthcare organization goes through this kind of look and reorganization of their facilities, they do the same thing.
And I appreciate that you're focused on that very much. Can you go back to the reduction in force, though, and tell me how much do you expect the reduction in force to be retirements or early retirements versus separations?
We're seeing a good bit of that right now. In the sense, as you always have some weekend, that's one of the things that I've had. I got accused of and from the cuts that we had that somebody had not been able to get their next appointment, and the doctor had actually just retired out, and they were just bringing in the new doctor. That's not only any reduction in force, that's just a simple matter of attrition in the hospitals. So some of that will be taken care of. Some have taken the early retirement possibility, which has been a program that I think has worked in a great deal. So some of that will be, normal attrition like that, and also the incentivized attrition.
I'm almost out of time, but I want to ask you really quickly, reviewing the situation that you inherited. The Biden administration's 2025 budget was misleading, as you know. They misrepresented the budget shortfall that they created. Congress closed the immediate $6 billion shortfall in March, but are there still budgetary problems that we have to clean up?
I think that's what we're trying to work through right now. I promise, what's interesting is, as I promised in my confirmation, I think you remember, maybe you and I had this conversation. I was not going to come to this committee or even send you information in which I can't give you either the information because it was not ready yet or we wasn't comfortable where the numbers are. The same thing applies to a lot of the questions I've got here today. As we move through these processes, we're going to make sure that we give the information. We're working through a budget process right now that doesn't come and surprise you in a political way at the end of the year. So I think that's why the president in his budget, which is very favorable to the VA in looking at what we need to do, is something that we can then build on and give you more information as we go.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Thank you.